In the heart of one of the most intense and unforgettable Senate hearings ever witnessed, Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana delivered a powerful, unfiltered critique that shook the foundations of Washington's broken fiscal system. This wasn't just another routine gathering of politicians exchanging polite disagreements over policy details. No, this was a raw, no-holds-barred confrontation where Kennedy stripped away the layers of hypocrisy waste and political gamesmanship that have plagued our nation's budget process for far too long. With his signature sharp wit, folksy charm, and unflinching honesty, he targeted Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and the entire dysfunctional apparatus that has driven America into a staggering $36 trillion of debt. Imagine sitting in that room feeling the tension rise as Kennedy's words cut through the air like a knife exposing truths that many in power would rather keep hidden. This moment captured the frustration of millions of everyday Americans who are tired of seeing their hard-earned tax dollars squandered on frivolous projects while essential needs go unmet. Let's break it down step by step, exploring not only what Kennedy said, but why it matters, how it reflects broader issues in our government, and what it could mean for the future of fiscal responsibility in this country. To truly appreciate the depth of Kennedy's message, we must first understand the broader context of the hearing itself. Held by the Senate Budget Committee, this session focused on examining proposals for managing federal spending, particularly through mechanisms designed to reclaim unspent funds and promote efficiency. The discussion centered around a rescission package aimed at trimming billions in previously allocated but unobligated dollars. Rescissions as a fiscal tool have a long history rooted in efforts to balance budgets without causing widespread disruption. They allow for the cancellation of funds that Congress has appropriated, but that remain unused, often due to changing priorities or inefficiencies. This process isn't new. It's embedded in laws dating back decades, ensuring that taxpayer money isn't left idle or directed toward outdated initiatives. Kennedy's participation highlighted his role as a vocal advocate for transparency and accountability, drawing on his experience to illuminate how the system has faltered. Let's delve deeper into the origins of these tools and why they matter today. The concept of controlling spending through rescissions emerged from a need to adapt to evolving economic conditions. In the mid-20th century, as government expanded, lawmakers sought ways to prevent automatic expenditure of every appropriated dollar. This led to formal structures that balance executive flexibility with congressional oversight. Today, in an era of record deficits, these mechanisms are more relevant than ever, serving as a check against perpetual growth in public outlays. Moreover, understanding this history helps contextualize why debates, like the one Kennedy ignited, are not mere partisan skirmishes, but essential conversations about the sustainability of our economic framework. For instance, without such tools, governments risk entrenching inefficiencies that compound over time, leading to ballooning costs and diminished public services. First, Kennedy set the stage with an apology that was anything but ordinary. Addressing the OMB director, he said, "Mr. Director, I want to apologize for the protesters, but I can assure you that under congressional rules and the laws in the District of Columbia, they will be promptly punished and put on double-secret probation. You'll probably see them back again today." This quip, delivered with a twinkle in his eye, referenced the classic film Animal House, where double-secret probation was a humorous exaggeration of authority. But beneath the joke lay a serious point. Disruptions in hearings have become all too common, reflecting the deep divisions in our society. These interruptions often stem from passionate debates over policy, where groups feel their voices aren't heard through traditional channels. Kennedy was acknowledging the chaos while reminding everyone that rules exist for a reason. They maintain order in democratic processes, allowing for productive dialogue amid disagreement. In a time when public trust in institutions is low, such light-hearted yet pointed remarks serve to humanize the proceedings and underscore the need for civility. Expanding on this, consider how protests in governmental settings have evolved over time. From civil rights demonstrations in the 1960s to more recent environmental or social justice actions, they represent a vital aspect of free speech. However, when they disrupt official business, they can hinder the very discussions needed to address grievances. Kennedy's approach, blending humor with firmness, models a way to navigate these tensions without escalating conflict. It's a reminder that effective governance requires both passion and decorum. Furthermore, this incident highlights broader societal trends, where polarization amplifies voices on all sides, sometimes at the expense of constructive progress. By handling it with wit, Kennedy not only diffused the moment, but also drew attention to the importance of maintaining focus on substantive issues like fiscal policy. He then pivoted to emphasize a key principle in governance, noting, "I think it's clear that allowing certain behaviors to persist only ensures they continue. We seem to have a problem with that concept." Here, Kennedy highlighted a fundamental idea of leadership tolerance, of inefficient or wasteful practices, only encourages more of the same. In the context of budgeting, this means permitting unchecked spending to go on without challenge leads to endless deficits and mounting debt. It's a lesson that applies not just to politics, but to everyday life. Parents know it when dealing with unruly children, setting boundaries to guide behavior. Managers know it in the workplace, addressing issues early to prevent escalation. And citizens should demand it from their elected officials, expecting stewardship over public funds. This principle ties directly into the hearing's focus on fiscal tools like rescissions, which act as corrective measures to halt the continuation of unnecessary expenditures. By invoking this idea, Kennedy framed the discussion as one of common sense, rather than partisanship, appealing to a shared understanding of responsibility. Let's expand this analogy further. In personal finance, if one ignores mounting credit card bills, the interest compounds, leading to financial ruin. Similarly, in national budgeting, ignoring wasteful allocations compounds debt, burdening future generations with higher taxes or reduced services. Kennedy's point urges a proactive stance, much like regular financial audits in businesses, to catch and correct inefficiencies before they balloon. This mindset could transform how we approach government spending, shifting from reactive crisis management to preventive fiscal health. Moreover, it underscores the ethical dimension. Leaders have a duty to act as prudent guardians of public resources, not enablers of excess. Examples from history, such as the balanced budget movements of the 1990s, show that applying this principle can yield surpluses and economic stability, proving its practical value. As the hearing progressed, Kennedy listened patiently as some of his colleagues lambasted the OMB director with accusations that bordered on the absurd. They claimed actions were undermining the sanctity and integrity of the appropriations process, even going so far as to suggest they were akin to abandoning vulnerable populations to dire fates. Kennedy, ever the voice of reason, amid the storm, couldn't hold back. He interjected with a rhetorical barrage that dismantled their arguments piece by piece. And I'm sitting here thinking, what sanctity? What integrity? What appropriations process? These questions weren't just rhetorical flourishes. They were a direct challenge to the status quo, questioning the very foundation of how Congress handles funding. For years, the appropriations process, the mechanism by which lawmakers allocate funds for government operations, has been more myth than reality. Ideally, it involves crafting and debating individual bills, allowing for scrutiny and amendments. In practice, however, it often devolves into rushed, massive omnibus packages or temporary extensions that bundle disparate items together, dodging detailed review and enabling hidden waste. This deviation from ideal practices has roots in increasing partisanship and the complexity of modern budgets, where thousands of pages obscure specifics, leading to last-minute deals that favor insiders over the public interest. To make matters worse, this opacity fosters a culture of unaccountability, where elected officials can claim credit for broad spending without owning the wasteful details. This breakdown has real consequences. When bills aren't brought to the floor for votes, opportunities for reform are lost, and special interests can embed funding for pet projects without broad accountability. Kennedy's words echoed the sentiments of fiscal conservatives and reformers across the spectrum, who argue that this lack of transparency allows pork barrel spending, those unnecessary add-ons that benefit narrow groups at the expense of the whole, to flourish unchecked. Consider the historical evolution. The process was designed post-World War II to ensure orderly budgeting, but over decades it has been eroded by political expediency. Deadlines are missed, leading to shutdown threats, and the cycle repeats. Kennedy's critique isn't isolated. Reports from oversight bodies like the Government Accountability Office have long highlighted how such dysfunction contributes to inefficiencies, with billions in unspent funds accumulating annually. By posing these questions, he invited reflection on whether the system serves the people or perpetuates self-interest. To illustrate, imagine a family budget where expenses are lumped into one vague category without itemization. It becomes impossible to cut waste. Similarly, congressional omnibuses hide extravagances, making true accountability elusive. Reform ideas include returning to regular order with separate votes on each bill category, enhancing visibility and debate. Such changes could restore faith in the process, reducing cynicism and encouraging more citizen involvement in fiscal matters. To illustrate his point, Kennedy drew from personal experience on the Senate Appropriations Committee. "I'm proud to serve on this committee. I watched this committee last year. We passed 11 out of 12 minibuses. Minibuses, for those unfamiliar, are smaller groupings of appropriation bills designed to make the process more manageable and focused, breaking down the massive federal budget into digestible parts like defense, health, or transportation. These weren't partisan wish lists. They represented bipartisan compromises, where members from both sides swallowed hard pills to reach agreements. We all choked down some stuff. You wouldn't believe," Kennedy admitted, painting a vivid picture of the tough negotiations involved. Concessions on pet projects, adjustments to funding levels, and debates over priorities that left no one fully satisfied but advanced the greater good. These compromises are the essence of democracy, requiring give and take to balance diverse needs. Yet the effort often feels futile when structural barriers prevent progress. Let's think about what those minibuses entail. For instance, a health minibus might include funding for disease research, hospital grants, and public health initiatives. Negotiators haggle over allocations, weighing urban versus rural needs or preventive versus curative care. Such processes, though grueling, foster understanding across aisles, highlighting shared goals amid differences. The failure to advance them reveals systemic flaws that prioritize power plays over public good, a pattern seen in other legislative areas like tax reform or infrastructure bills. Yet what happened next exposed the real bottleneck in the system, and we sent them to Senator Schumer, my friend. He refused to bring the bills to the floor of the Senate. Calling Schumer my friend was a classic Southern touch of civility, adding a layer of respect even in disagreement, but it didn't soften the blow. At the time, the majority party held control over the Senate calendar, deciding what gets debated and voted on. By not scheduling floor time, leaders can effectively stall legislation, forcing reliance on stopgap measures that maintain the status quo without innovation. This tactic isn't unique to one individual or party. It's a symptom of deeper gridlock, where political calculations override progress. Kennedy drove the point home. Now that's when he was in the majority. You really think he's going to allow us to vote on a budget when the politics have changed? And his politics? If you do, you're Willie Nelson high. You're smoking some of the best dope God ever put breath in. This phrase encapsulates the cynicism born from repeated disappointments where promises of cooperation evaporate under pressure. It also illustrates how language can bridge the gap between elite policy discussions and everyday understanding, making the critique more relatable to the average voter. This colorful metaphor, referencing country legend Willie Nelson's well-known affinity for a relaxed lifestyle, brought levity to a grave issue, but it underscored Kennedy's skepticism about entrenched positions shifting easily. The phrase Willie Nelson high quickly became a cultural touchstone in discussions capturing the absurdity of expecting sudden cooperation in a polarized environment. It resonated because it humanized the frustration, making complex fiscal debates accessible. Kennedy wasn't just pointing fingers. He was indicting a system where partisan politics often trumps collaborative progress. In such a setup, budgets become battlegrounds for scoring points rather than tools for effective governance. This leads to a reliance on makeshift solutions, perpetuating inefficiency and eroding public confidence. To expand on this cultural reference, Willie Nelson's image as a free spirit contrasts with the rigid, structured world of politics, highlighting how unrealistic optimism can blind one to realities. Its use in rhetoric shows how pop culture can make policy critiques stick, encouraging wider audience engagement in civic matters. In today's media landscape, such memorable lines can go viral, amplifying the message and pressuring leaders to respond. What appropriations process? All we've got left are CRs and rescission packages, he continued, laying bare the reality. CRs, or continuing resolutions, are temporary funding extensions that keep government lights on at previous spending levels without introducing new reforms or cuts. They're like kicking the can down the road, postponing hard decisions while interest on debt accrues and opportunities for savings slip away. Over the past decade, Congress has passed dozens of CRs, sometimes multiple in a single fiscal year, leading to uncertainty for agencies and programs. Rescission packages conversely offer a proactive approach, proposing to cancel unspent funds to reduce deficits. Kennedy defended their use vigorously, and this isn't the first time a rescission package has been sent. Is it? No, sir. A bunch have been proposed before, haven't they? And did civilization melt? They did not. No, they didn't. This historical perspective is crucial as it normalizes the tool, showing it's been part of fiscal management without catastrophic results. By repeating, they did not, Kennedy emphasized the point with rhythmic force, driving home the absence of dire consequences from past uses. History indeed supports this view. The practice of rescissions is governed by the Empoundment Control Act of 1974, enacted to regulate executive authority over funds after controversies in the early 1970s. This law divided impoundments, the withholding of appropriated money, into rescissions, permanent cancellations, and deferrals, temporary delays requiring congressional approval for both. This framework was a congressional assertion of purse power rooted in the Constitution's assignment of appropriations to lawmakers. Prior to 1974, impoundments were common but contentious. For example, in the 1960s and early 1970s, funds for highways and water projects were held back to control inflation or shift priorities. The act curtailed arbitrary actions, requiring presidential messages to Congress detailing proposals. Let's examine the act's impact in depth. It shifted from informal practices to structured accountability, reducing unilateral power while allowing flexibility for economic shifts. Case studies from the 1970s show early recessions focused on cutting post-war excess, aiding in inflation control without major backlash. The Act has been amended over time, such as in the 1990s, to limit deferrals, reflecting ongoing efforts to refine the balance between branches. Over the years, rescissions have been employed variably. In the 1970s, dozens were proposed annually, often for defense or foreign aid, with mixed success. The 1980s saw peaks with over 1,000 suggestions, many targeting duplicative programs. Success rates hovered around 30%, saving billions without derailing operations. By the 1990s, use declined as budgets tightened, but examples include rescinding funds for outdated technology initiatives. The Act's enduring legacy is promoting dialogue between branches, ensuring funds align with current needs. Critics note it can politicize spending, but supporters see it as essential for adaptability in a dynamic world. For instance, during economic downturns, rescissions have redirected funds to stimulus without new appropriations, demonstrating practicality in crisis management. In recent years, proposals have targeted areas like education grants or environmental programs, sparking debates on priorities, but rarely causing systemic failure. Applying this to today's debt crisis, the 36 trillion figure stems from multifaceted causes. Post-2008 recession stimulus added trillions, as did pandemic responses. Entitlements like Social Security and Medicare grow with demographics consuming over half the budget. Tax policies, including cuts and loopholes, reduce revenues. Wars and defense spending contribute alongside interest compounding at higher rates. Solutions require holistic approaches, revenue enhancements, entitlement reforms, and spending caps. Kennedy's heaven analogy captures the reluctance politicians favor popularity over pain-delaying action until crises force it. Let's break down the debt composition further. Mandatory spending on entitlements and interest now exceeds 70% of the budget, leaving little for discretionary items like education or research. Demographic shifts with an aging population exacerbate this as more retirees draw benefits without proportional workforce growth. Economic factors like stagnant wages and inequality increase reliance on safety nets, amplifying outlays. Global events such as trade wars or supply chain disruptions add unforeseen costs, further straining resources. In PEPFAR's case, the program's evolution merits examination. Started in 2003, it has invested over $100 billion, averting 25 million deaths and 5 million orphanings. It operates in 50-plus countries, emphasizing treatment prevention and equity. Funding supports community outreach, vital for hard-to-reach groups like LGBTQ in Uganda, where anti-gay laws heighten HIV risks. Advocacy components educate on rights and health-reducing stigma. However, rescissions target unobligated funds from multi-year awards, some lapsed. Impacts: a 2025 funding freeze has closed programs per reports, leading to 60,000, 74,000 projected excess deaths in Africa. In Tanzania and Uganda, clinics shuttered, disrupting care for millions. LGBTQ groups face amplified challenges with reduced safe spaces and services. To contextualize PEPFAR's structure, it integrates bilateral aid with multilateral efforts, coordinating with organizations like the Global Fund. This layered approach maximizes impact, but also creates complexities in fund tracking where unobligated balances accumulate from delays or overestimations. Success stories include reducing mother-to-child transmission rates by 90% in some regions, showcasing the program's transformative power. Yet, Kennedy asserted no denial of core care, with $10 billion remaining. This distinction, life-saving versus ancillary fuels debate. Advocates warn cuts indirectly harm by weakening holistic efforts. Fiscal hawks argue for prioritization amid debt. Globally, this affects U.S. soft power as partners seek alternatives from Europe or China. Domestically, it underscores trade-offs. Foreign aid is 1% of budget, but yields security benefits through disease control. Expanding on soft power, PEPFAR has built alliances, improving health systems in recipient nations, which in turn enhances diplomatic ties and reduces migration pressures from instability. Critics of cuts point to long-term costs, like increased global instability leading to higher defense spending. Kennedy's style, blending humor with hard truths, makes his message memorable. The sick bucket quip vividly critiques questionable spending, like advocacy seen as peripheral. His disbelief at arguing basics reflects voter sentiment. Why debate abroad when home struggles persist? This calls for reevaluation, perhaps through congressional oversight, to refine programs. Oversight committees could conduct annual reviews assessing program efficacy and aligning with strategic goals. Such measures would ensure aid delivers maximum value, balancing compassion with accountability. Ultimately, Kennedy's takedown was a beacon for change. In a room of status quo, he demanded better embodying principle over politics. His leadership model, honest, witty, fearless, could inspire reform, ensuring systems serve all. As debt looms and needs grow, such voices are crucial for navigating ahead. Let's consider potential reforms. Biennial budgeting could reduce annual gridlock, allowing more time for deliberation. Automatic stabilizers like spending triggers based on economic indicators could enforce discipline without constant votes. These ideas, if implemented, might prevent future crises. Extending on debt causes structural imbalances play a role. Automation and trade shifts reduced wage growth, increasing reliance on government support. Infrastructure decay requires trillions, yet funding lags. Climate adaptation adds urgency, with disaster costs soaring. Solutions like the Act's tools can help, but broader bipartisan efforts are needed. Tax code overhauls, spending reviews, debt ceilings with teeth. Infrastructure, for example, bridges, roads, and broadband are essential for productivity, but underinvestment leads to economic drag estimated at 2% GDP loss annually. Climate events like hurricanes or wildfires cost hundreds of billions, straining emergency funds without preventive measures. Investing in resilient systems could save money long-term, turning potential liabilities into assets. For PEPFAR, Uganda's context is poignant. Harsh laws criminalize homosexuality, driving underground communities where HIV thrives. Funding supported safe clinics, peer education, and legal aid. Cuts force reliance on local or other donors, but capacity is limited. Reports show 2025 suspensions closed 50-plus sites, halting testing for thousands. This could spike infections, straining global efforts to end AIDS. In Uganda specifically, HIV prevalence among key populations is 35% versus 5%, general underscoring advocacy's role in targeted prevention. Without it, progress stalls, potentially reversing decades of gains. Kennedy's multi-year grant point emphasizes nuance. Many programs span years with funds accruing. Rescinding expired portions avoids waste without abrupt stops. Yet transitions matter. Poor planning risks lives. Effective implementation requires phased drawdowns and alternative sourcing to minimize disruptions. International collaboration could fill gaps, but coordination is key. In public broadcasting, similar questions arise: why fund political content amid debt? Kennedy implied focus on service over ideology. Public media like PBS provides educational programming, but critics argue bias in news coverage diverts from neutral information dissemination. Reforms could tie funding to nonpartisan metrics, ensuring value for taxpayers. This debate extends to other areas like arts, grants, or research funding, where alignment with public benefit is scrutinized. His overall message, reform or perish. With wit, he demolished excuses, urging action. More like him could clear the fog, fostering accountability. To build on this, imagine a Congress where debates are substantive, not theatrical, with members prioritizing data over drama. Such a shift could restore faith in governance, encouraging higher voter turnout and civic participation. To further elaborate, consider rescission's procedural details. Presidents submit special messages to Congress detailing amounts and reasons. Lawmakers have 45 days to act via bill. Inaction means funds stay. This checks power, preventing unilateral cuts. The timeline encourages timely review, balancing urgency with deliberation. Streamlining this could involve digital platforms for faster analysis. Historical cases: 1975 rescissions saved $1 billion in aid. 1986 targeted farm subsidies. No meltdowns ensued. Economies adapted. These examples show rescissions as evolutionary tools adjusting to fiscal realities without shock. Learning from them could inform current strategies. Debt's human cost, high interest, diverts from schools' roads. Families pay via taxes, inflation. Kennedy's analogy urges moral reckoning. It's a call to intergenerational equity, ensuring today's choices don't burden tomorrow's youth. Educational campaigns could raise awareness, building support for reforms. PEPFAR's advocacy in Uganda, $5 million funded awareness, reducing discrimination, linked infections. Cuts may increase cases by 10–20% per models. Modeling from organizations like UNAIDS projects, ripple effects where reduced advocacy leads to lower testing uptake, amplifying transmission. Mitigating this requires targeted reallocations. Remaining $10 billion supports $20 million on treatment, but gaps in prevention could undo gains. Prevention, including education and condoms, is cost-effective, averting future treatments costing far more. Emphasizing it preserves program efficiency. Kennedy's hearing performance, a masterclass in rhetoric blending humor, passion. It viralized, sparking debates on fiscal health. Social media amplified clips reaching millions, educating on budget intricacies. This demonstrates communications power in policy change. For the future, perhaps enhanced act enforcement, mandatory reviews. Regular audits could identify rescission candidates, preemptively streamlining processes. Technology like AI could assist in analyzing spending patterns. In conclusion, Kennedy's words endure as a call to arms against waste for integrity in process. His critique transcends the hearing, offering a roadmap for sustainable governance. By embracing transparency, compromise, and courage, lawmakers can steer the nation toward prosperity, avoiding the pitfalls of unchecked debt and inefficiency. This isn't just about numbers. It's about values, ensuring government reflects the people's will and secures a brighter tomorrow. To expand even further, let's explore the psychological aspects of fiscal decision-making. Cognitive biases, like present bias, where leaders favor short-term gains over long-term stability, contribute to debt accumulation. Kennedy's straightforward language counters this by making abstract concepts tangible, urging immediate action. Behavioral economics suggests nudges such as public debt clocks or mandatory impact statements could foster better choices. Applying these insights could revolutionize budgeting practices. Another angle, the role of media in shaping fiscal narratives. Sensational coverage of shutdowns or cuts often overshadows nuanced discussions. Kennedy's viral moments demonstrate how effective communication can cut through noise, educating the public and pressuring officials. Responsible journalism could amplify reform efforts, focusing on facts over drama. On global health, beyond PEPFAR programs like the Global Fund complement efforts, but U.S. leadership is pivotal. Cuts could prompt shifts in donor dynamics, with emerging powers filling voids, potentially altering geopolitical balances. Maintaining commitment ensures influence and stability. Domestically linking foreign aid to national security disease outbreaks abroad can become pandemics at home, as seen with Ebola or COVID. Justifying investments through this lens aligns with fiscal prudence, yielding returns in avoided crises. This integrated view promotes smarter allocation. Kennedy's Southern charm, exemplified in phrases like "my friend," adds relatability bridging divides. In polarized times, such interpersonal touches can de-escalate tensions, facilitating dialogue. Emulating this could improve legislative productivity. Considering economic theories, Keynesian approaches advocate deficit spending in downturns. But chronic deficits defy this, leading to crowding out where government borrowing raises interest rates, stifling private investment. Austerity versus growth debates rage. But Kennedy's balanced restraint, avoiding extremes. Hybrid models might offer paths forward. For entitlements, reforms like raising retirement age or means testing could curb growth but require political will. Public education on these issues is key, demystifying complex topics to build support. Simulations showing future scenarios could sway opinion. Infrastructure investment, paradoxically, can reduce debt long-term by boosting growth. Tax revenues rise with productivity, yet initial outlays deter action. Public-private partnerships offer paths forward, sharing risks and rewards. Successful examples like toll roads illustrate potential. Climate fiscal impacts. Adaptation funding prevents larger disaster bills. Green infrastructure, like renewable energy, creates jobs while cutting emissions. Integrating these into budgets demands foresight beyond annual cycles. Policy frameworks like carbon pricing could generate revenue for such investments. In Uganda, PEPFAR's holistic model includes gender equity, addressing how violence affects health. Cuts to advocacy fragment this, increasing vulnerabilities for women and minorities. Tailored interventions are essential for equitable outcomes. Multi-year grants allow long-term planning, but flexibility in rescissions ensures adaptability to new threats like emerging variants. Balancing stability with agility is crucial for program success. Public broadcasting evolution from educational roots to broader content raises questions on mission creep. Refocusing on underserved areas like rural access could justify funding amid tight budgets. Audience metrics could guide allocations. Kennedy's reform call echoes historical figures like Everett Dirksen, who championed fiscal responsibility. Their legacies remind that change is possible through persistent advocacy. Drawing inspiration could motivate current leaders. Procedural innovations like fast-track votes for rescissions could expedite savings, reducing bureaucratic drag. Digital voting systems might enhance efficiency. Historical parallels. Great Depression-era reforms laid groundwork for modern systems, yet today's challenges demand updates. Adapting lessons from past recoveries could guide present strategies. Debt's toll on innovation, high borrowing limits. R&D funding, stunting progress in tech and medicine. Prioritizing cuts to waste frees resources for growth engines. Investing in innovation yields exponential returns. Models predict, without action, debt-to-GDP ratios exceed 200% by mid-century, triggering potential crises. Proactive measures now avert this, safeguarding economic sovereignty. Kennedy's passion inspires civic engagement, encouraging voters to demand accountability at ballots. Grassroots movements could amplify his message. Future visions: a streamlined Congress with tech-aided transparency like blockchain for tracking funds, revolutionizing oversight. This could minimize corruption and maximize efficiency. In sum, Kennedy's hearing was pivotal, highlighting paths to fiscal health. His enduring impact lies in sparking conversations that lead to action for a resilient America. Extending this legacy requires collective effort from policymakers to citizens to forge a path of prudence and prosperity. Let's commit to that vision, ensuring the lessons from this moment endure for generations.